Let's check project settings. For model with ARKit curves, Viseme curve smoothness parameter should be from 0.5 to 1. Adjust it for your model if needed. Default animation targets here work for auto-generated pose assets, so we don't need to modify them. Auto-generated Visemes are easy to use, but they aren't perfect. If you create your own pose asset manually, you'd need to modify names of poses here to generate animation sequences. Usually, model has morph targets names as ARKit curves, but it's not always this way. Sometimes names of morph targets have some prefix, and sometimes, for example, jaw open curve should control rotation of the jawbone, rather than morph target. To handle this issue, let's at first create pose asset for ARKit curves before we create a pose asset for Visemes. Add new Lipsync remap blueprint. It's our helper needed only to generate ARKit pose asset. Now let's override its curve remap function. In this function, input parameters is a name of ARKit curve. We should return corresponding name of morph target on our model. Luckily, in our case, they match. To automatically generate pose asset, open menu windows. Create pose asset with ARKit curves. We should select our character model and Lipsync remap asset. It has priority over manual curve binding map. In the curve to bone binding map, you can bind ARKit curve to skeleton bone rotation. This is unwanted setup. You'll get two pose assets, one for morph targets and the second to control bones. The second pose asset should be applied to your skeletal mesh in post-process animation blueprint regardless of all other settings. In your model, all our curves correspond to morph targets, so we must clear curve to bone binding map. Now we can create the pose asset with Visemes. Let's create character blueprint. Add audio component to play voice and Ynnk Lipsync controller. Set names of our audio component and controlled skeletal mesh. Note: in the character blueprint, actual name of main skeletal mesh component, which is character mesh 0, is different from its alias, which is just mesh, but usually they're equal. As I mentioned before, default animation targets in project settings should work for auto-generated pose asset, so we can copy them to here. Soundwave keeps audio data in compressed form, and it takes some time to prepare audio when we start playing. To avoid desynchronization, set Auto Prime Soundwave checkbox. You shouldn't set it if you're only going to play lip sync generated in runtime. When you generate Ynnk voice lip-sync data object, it adds asset user data to source Soundwave asset. We can use it to get a reference to Ynnk voice lip-sync data from Soundwave with getRelated lip-sync data function. Final step is to add lip-sync player in animation blueprint.
Well, what can't be done by main courage in war must be done by circumvention.
At first, we applied pose asset with Vissames in Animation Blueprint, but it's also possible to use it within Ynnk Lipsync controller.
Well, what can't be done by main courage in war must be done by circumvention.
You can see that Lipsync animation improved. This is because we had to disable Normalize Curves checkbox in Ynnk Lipsync controller, and Vissames pose asset in this
Well,
component
what
is
can't be
applied
done
without
by main
normalization.
courage in war must be done by circumvention.
To generate Lipsync in runtime, use Recognize Uncompressed PCM Data function. It expects audio data in 16-bit sample format.
Words are framed to express a level of thought, which is by no means primitive.
It often makes sense to store Lipsync animation in animation sequence objects and play them instead of using Ynnk Lipsync controller component. But first, we need to convert Vissames curves to our morph target curves inside of the voice Lipsync data object. Note, the default generation settings for this window are stored in the project settings. Feel free to switch generation settings to get the best result.
Well, what can't be done by main courage in war must be done by circumvention. Well, what can't be done by main courage in war must be done by circumvention. Well,
Now let's play animation sequence. In this setup, we don't need any more Ynnk Lipsync controller component as well as audio component. We don't use Ynnk Lipsync controller, so we have to prepare sound wave asset manually. We can extract reference to animation sequence from asset user data the same way we did it before with Lipsync reference.
well, what can't be done by main courage in war must be done by circumvention.
And finally, it's possible to apply Lipsync to existing
Well, what
animation
can't be
sequence
done by
assets
main
with
courage
animation
in war
data
must be done by
modifier class.
circumvention.
You can create child blueprint inherited from this animation modifier to cache some generation settings and batch apply it to animations in Content Browser.
Well, what can't be done by main courage in war must be done by circumvention. Well, what can't be done by main courage in war must be done by circumvention. Well, what can't be done by main courage in war must be done by circumvention. Well, what can't be done